Hi, this is Tom Jennings from Crony Media Group, and I'm here with Jay Ritz. And we want to talk about a very exciting project that Crony Media Group is just starting with. It's going to be a photography class like none other. And we'll be doing different video segments about a particular brand of photography, concert photography, which is a specialized field. Sitting with me is, of course, Jay Ritz from Crony Media Group, and Jay has been a concert photographer for, I'll let you fill that in. How long have you been doing this?
About 6.5, 7 years or so.
All right, 6.5, 7 years. Can you give me maybe some of the highlights of your 6.5, 7 years, maybe some of the bigger artists that people would know that you've had a chance to photograph?
I covered Bob Seger, Joe Walsh, Five Finger Death Punch, Megadeth. Let's see who else, Martina McBride, Eric Church, Van Perry. I mean, the list goes on and on and on.
So it's safe to say you've done a cross section of artists. You're talking Megadeth, and you mentioned Martina McBride.
Everything from metal to country to folk to everything.
So when you're approaching your artists, let's say you've got a Martina McBride versus say Megadeth. What are some of the big differences as far as your approach?
Well, typically your country artists are more laid back. They're a little more. Their energy on stage is a little more about their music and their crowd connection. They speak through their music. All artists speak through their music, but metal and hard rock, they tend to rely more on their energy. That's how they communicate. That's how they work their audience, is through their antics on stage are more pronounced than say Martina McBride would be, as opposed to an Ivan Moody from Five Finger Death Punch.
And I would imagine, I'm familiar with your work obviously because we've known each other for a long time, but you see some of your metal shots where you got the guy's hair flying up in the air, you're dealing with dark lighting conditions, and say, I know you photographed George Strait, who kind of stands there. So do you have a preference, or is it just you kind of go into each show and say, we'll do what we have to do?
Particularly my taste is metal and rock, but music is music. We both been around music long enough, and both have played enough music that everybody has their skill and their talents and their passion, and that's what I try to convey through my photography is their passion and their emotion that comes through their music.
All right, so let's get to some of the nuts and bolts. And I mean, when we get into the main course, and again, this is just kind of an overview just to give you an idea of some of the subjects that we'll be talking about. But it's just an overview from somebody that's going into concert photography, which is certainly different than family photography or family portrait photography or outdoor photography and things like that. When you're going into a concert, where do you typically photograph from?
Typically, there's an area in front of the stage. It's called a pit. That's generally where you photograph from for any live show.
And pit, I think Peach Pit. I mean, what are we talking about when we're talking pit? That may be something, a term people aren't familiar with.
The pit is the area in front of the stage, between the stage and the first row. There's usually a barricade to keep the fans from jumping on stage. That's where your security guards reside. Some venues have a 3-foot pit. Some have up to 8-10 feet that you can work in, and typically you have a handful of photographers in there working together, and there's like an unwritten etiquette, while you're in the pit.
And the old expression is, for people that have done this for a while, 3 songs, no flash.
Correct.
So and that changes with different artists, and also the pit, although it's typically in the photographer's pit, there's places that we shot that don't have a pit, and there's other artists that want to do a soundboard shoot, which is back maybe 15-20 rows. So what is that going to dictate? I mean, when you know that you're going into a particular shoot, where you're going to shoot from, what are some of the things that you have to take into consideration?
Well, you always it helps be familiar with the venue, of course, but you always come prepared. You always carry your long lens, your short lens, and that's some of the stuff we can get into more as we progress farther into the series, but you always have to be prepared, and most photographers are well aware of that situation, but you should know beforehand, before you go to the venue, whether it's going to be a pit shoot or a soundboard shoot, and you'll usually get that confirmation along with your credentials.
Again, and the credentialing process, that's something we'll talk about in an episode of our of our school or our video school. But you know, it's interesting. You touched on something, and maybe we'll wrap up with this. You know, sometimes you show up to a venue and you might think that you're shooting in the pit, and what do you know? You're shooting from the soundboard. So, are you the kind of person that when you show up to a shoot, you've got everything with you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I carry all my gear with me. I don't leave anything to chance. Because even if you're shooting from the pit and you have a long lens, you can still use that for close-ups. Like I said, music is emotion, and that's what you try to capture is the artist's emotion that he put into the song that he's written to perform. So you want to convey that to the best of your ability.
All right. One final question. You know, I'm gonna throw it out there. I've got an iPhone. Why should I care about having all this fancy equipment? I can just take great pictures with my iPhone, can't I?
Yeah, the iPhone does take great pictures. The only problem is its low light sensitivity and its ability to give you a good clean image that you can use for publishing, you know, to be published. I mean, if you want to be published and you want an image that's a fairly decent size, the iPhone just isn't going to cut it. A lot of people get this misconception that, no, it's a 25 megapixel or it's a 50 megapixel camera. Well, in all actuality, megapixel count is important. When it comes down to it, if you have 50 million pixels on the area of a pinhead, and you have 50 million pixels on the area of a 3x3 square, it comes down to the size of the pixel. And the bigger the pixel, the more light and more information you can capture, and that gives you less noise, and you can clean up your images much better for publication. I've had ads published in Guitar Player magazine that if you did that with an iPhone, it'd be grainy, whereas the image that I used was crystal clear.
All right, so and just kind of wrap things up, you know, this course is going to be designed for people that really want to get into concert photography. So you should have a basic understanding of photography, professional grade equipment. We'll get into kind of the bottom end of that,
Sure.
and of course an outlet to shoot for. And there's different. I mean, Jay shoots for various media outlets. He shoots for BackstageAccess.com, and like you said, you've been published in magazines, local newspapers, those types of things. And if for nothing else, one of the advantages of being able to shoot concerts is that you get into concerts for free. And if you're talking about $100, $200 concert tickets, this is a pretty interesting hobby to have, even if it's something that you may not necessarily want to do for a living. So you can look forward to 8 to 10 segments where we'll be talking the nuts and bolts. You can look through our site for some of Jay's work, which is just absolutely amazing. And certainly, if you want some more information, you can email us at the email address that's scrolling down on your screen below. Thanks, man. I'm looking forward to this adventure. I think we're going to have a good time.
It's going to be fun.
All right.